Okay, I'm going to move on to Europa now. And as I did with Thor, I'm setting up just a fixed sawtooth wave from the basic waveform. It runs from sine to triangle to square to saw, and I'm just leaving it in the saw position. And we're going to start with the spectral filter, which has a couple different modes. I've got the keyboard tracking all the way up. I've got some resonance in there so we can hear it. And this is the low pass 12 filter. So here we go. Kind of a nice, sweet sounding filter. There are a whole bunch of filters here, so we're going to go now to the low pass 24. A little bit more synthetic sounding. Can be very nice and smooth with less resonance. Let's move on to the high pass 24. And there's a band pass 24 as well. Let me open up the band. It gets very narrow. So again, almost low pass when the cutoff is low. Definitely cuts the lows and highs in the mid-range. And focuses mostly on highs up there. Now I can make this much narrower. So I'm really just hitting a couple of harmonics right now. And I give you narrow it down to 1. Kind of cool. Now I have something they call a parametric EQ. And right now you can see in the display here that it's a flat response. You use the resonance to boost and the frequency to choose where to boost. And you also use resonance to cut. So you can make a nice notch with this. And you can see that reflected in the spectrum display over here. It's not, if truth be told, it's not really a parametric EQ, because a parametric EQ has control over gain, bandwidth, and frequency. This just has the gain control with the resonance and the frequency control. There's no bandwidth here. And it's a pretty narrow boost, but we'll forgive them for that. So that's, you can think of it like a single peak kind of thing, or a single notch. Now, there's also something similar called a dual peak. And in this case, the cutoff sets where the overall setting is, and the resonance determines how close the peaks are to each other. So let's hear some of that. It's kind of cool. You can get to 2 different parts of the sound. So now we're hearing the fundamental and some high harmonics. Let's bring those closer together. So you can have some cool stuff with this dual peak. Let's go on to the vocal formant. So it also has a formant. That's more of an O. That's more of an ooh. That's more of an E. That's more of an ah sound. You'll notice with this that the resonance kind of, again, splits apart the peaks. Those are the formants of your tongue and your tongue placement. And this peak here is just a standard format of your head. Anyway, we'll talk more about format, but some really cool vocal sounds available from that. Now we have a couple of other filters here. These do not have resonance. What they have is a slope control. So if you wanted a very gentle filter, you could do that. You want something super steep, you can do this. And anywhere in between. Now you can't resonate, but because the cutoff is so sharp, you can almost pick out the highest harmonic. We also have a high pass version of that. So with full bandwidth, there's no low end cut. All right, the next thing we have is a comb plus and minus. So again, we'll start without resonance. We need a little bit. It's a very gentle, positive comb here. Very sweet sounding. And again, you can modulate that. So I've got LFO1 here. There you have a flanger. All right, and we also have a comb minus mode. It's a little more hollow type thing because you're boosting mostly odd harmonics and cutting the positive ones, the even ones. Oh yeah. Now we have something called resonator. And they've just given us some weird curves here. It's moving around because the notes are changing, but that's what it looks like. And the more resonance you get, the more you're bringing in some different frequencies. And we have a resonator 2. Again, you know, adding resonance will give certain frequencies a boost. It's like you're giving a frequency response of some other instrument or other sound to the sound you're working with. And then we have a version 3 of that as well. So let's go back to resonator 1, and I'll let you hear the bass with some of that. And resonator 2. And of course you can sweep this. Almost like a bass guitar kind of sound. And resonator 3. Wait, there's 2 more. So, whoops, we have something called envelope 4. And you'll notice the envelope 4 here is the filter shape. Kind of weird. Let's, we can change that shape. So this would give us more lows. So we can change the filter and get different shapes, including really wacky stuff. So that's kind of cool. And then we have one other that's really interesting, and I need to explore this more, and it's called user wave. And you can load in a sound from Reason. So I'm going to pick a low conga. There we go. I've loaded that in, and let's see what that does when we run the sequence. So on the Europa, there are 3 engines. And right now, I'll turn the other 2 on. So I've got a sawtooth and a square and a sine wave all together. And each one of them has their own filter setting. So I could put the LP24 here. I could put the dual peak on the square here. Let me turn this guy on. So you can see as I go to these different engines, I have different spectral filters. So my point is simply that each engine has its own filter. But there is also a way of mixing these waveforms together, 1, 2, and 3. And they go to a mixer, and that mixer goes through the filter or optionally bypasses it. So to engage the filter on a channel, so to put it on engine 1, I simply click this button here. And now I have this filter as well. Now this filter gives me a few different options here. We have a state variable filter like we saw in Thor with high pass, band pass, low pass, and notch. We have a ladder 24, and we have something called a multiple feedback filter, low pass 12, low pass 24, and a high pass 24. And finally, this K35 filter, which is modeled after the Korg MS-20. And they have different characters. So let's hear that filter. Now remember, this one filter could potentially be on all 3 of my audio engines. They're mixed together before they get to this filter, as opposed to the individual spectral filter on each engine. All right, so let's start with a high pass filter and let's give it a go. So that's the high pass. And again, we have resonance. Let's go to the band pass. A little low, so I'm going to just bring up the volume a little. And here's the low pass. Nice filter. And I suspect very similar to the one that's on Thor. All right, we have a notch also. Pretty subtle. Then we have the ladder filter. Steeper slope. And then we have this multiple feedback filter. Different design, and you can hear it's got a different sound. Here's the state variable. 12 dB. Ladder filter. And the multiple feedback filter. And notice that I'm not losing as much bass when I add the resonance. And we also have a low pass 24. And we have a high pass at 24. And we have this beautiful K35. Another 12 dB per octave filter. So it's really subtle. It's not as sharp as either of the two 24 filters. This is a much more mellow, gentler kind of filter sound. So some really great options here for Europa. If you can't find the filter you're looking for, you have a problem. And I love how they incorporated some of the best things in Thor in Europa.